This is part 2 about why I think that you should always offboard from a habitual abusive situation or a dangerous or deadly red flag or 7 alarm level of a dumpster fire of a relationship, or divorce a narc, or divorce someone who is toxic. And what I mean by divorce is sometimes you're not always married to a narc. Sometimes you're the object of a session of a narc. Sometimes you are the object of a narc's complete levels of anarchy, vengeful, spitefulness, and the definition of what happens with the victim who has to sit up there and be the subject of the torment, or who ends up being the target of the narc once revealed. And that's where I wanted to unpack where you have to divorce a narc in every way, shape, or form due to when you are a victim or a target, and what I call a resilient warrior, if you can get away from them safely and not die. And it's not like at a level of did you die though? The levels of torment and endangerment, reckless endangerment, the levels of negligence or malfeasance that happens between the time that you offboard and you legitimately are trying to move on with your life and be narc free, you're going to spend more time trying to justify why you left the narc to other narcs by proxy, malignant narcs, or other people who are not diagnosed narcs, but they have toxic behaviors and they sit below the spectrum to be diagnosed for NPD or APD, which is narcissistic personality disorder, or APD, which is antisocial personality disorder. You're looking at a crucial failure, an epic failure of the in-between people who are supposed to be set to protect you. And you're always seeing the victim as reacting. And narcs are very, how do I say this in the best pentameter without saying a foul word? Narcs are the worst type of epically sociopathic, clever, and I'm giving them better words than what I want to say, adept at adapting to whatever's clever for them to get out of every bit of their foolishness, to reduce it down to a level of invalidation, a level of having even the help come after you, the victim, when you're either 1, divorcing them, 2, divorcing them emotionally, 3, divorcing them physically, 4, divorcing them sexually, and 5, divorcing them legitimately in every way there is, financially, physically, emotionally, all that, and you're just sitting up here wondering how far they're willing to go to keep up the act. And when I just say an act, the act that they put on and the theatrics that they will put on is maddening to the victim, who will sit there and often in court with their mouth wide open looking at a narc do the utmost level of theatrics and levels of betraying behavior to paint you out the problem. And as soon as court's over, they will love bomb the person that they've done this to, or dragged you through levels and depths of coercive control, economic abuse, tragic levels of pulling kids in the middle of their narc foolery just to prove a false narrative of them not being a narc or a sociopath or combined narcopath. Ted Bundy, Charles Manson, borderline red flag. And if I could ever explain it to a judge in this manner and pentameter without cussing, because it's hard as a victim of a narc and divorcing a narc and literally moving on from a narc years out, and they elicit the levels of abusive antics to keep it up. They ruin lives, strategically ruin your life even after you leave. You're not safe from identity theft with them because they know you. You're not safe from coercive control tactics because they know you. You're not safe from emotional hoovering because they know you. You're not safe from emotional torment, detriment, or levels of them costing you economically every which way they can. If they can contact everybody that you do business with, if you're not a business person, everybody that you're around, to smear campaign you and triangulate people to get on their side, so they will try to beat you to the punch in telling everything. But what they fail to realize, by the time you get through telling your side of the story and you legitimately have receipts for days for what they've done, they can't stand that. That's where they turn into dangerous people. They turn into levels and depths of Satan's disciple in the flesh. I ain't talking about the cult. I'm talking about just Satan's disciple levels of, and everything has a culture. And let me correct that. Everything has a culture, and it comes from the Latin word cultura. Okay? So we all have a culture. We have societal, and we have neighborhood, we have church, we have work, our environment. Everything has a culture. With a narc, their culture is flying monkeys and people who are enablers. And they will try to draw anybody or triangulate anybody into their orifice of a web of deceit and lies and betrayal to do anything for their image to not be blown, or for you to reveal the true them. Like there's a saying, there's three sides to everything: the narc's version, the victim's version, and God's version, who saw everything and knows exactly what happened, besides the Vic, who knows what's happened. So when you're talking about a predatory narc or a dangerous sociopath or a narcopath combined, who has spent upwards to 20, 30 years with a perfect persona, I can never do any wrong. I would never do this. I would never be that type of person. He or she's lying. And if you heard the theatrics that they come up with, they're crazy. Oh, they're deranged. They're nuts. And you're sitting up here as a victim listening to someone say this, and you're like, okay, XYZ, 3/4, 3/4. Here we go with a diagram of how you've done crazy make to me. And when you listen to them put on the theatrics that they do in a court of law, or when they elicit law enforcement into their narc foolery web of lies, you're going to a level and depth of insanity that goes round and round till they exhaust you. Either you stay with them or you leave them, or they ruin your life and you spend years. And when I say years, you spend years piecing back together your life that they destroyed strategically because you outed them, because you exposed the narc. And they have what I call an inclination to be a victim. Their narcissistic injury is real. They'll have anybody of the help or nomenclature of help, judges, lawyers, doctors, therapists on their side if they're good at acting and cutting up and showing a side of them like they're concerned. I've dealt with it where they act like they're super concerned, but all they're trying to do is gather intel how they can further damage you, but fly underneath the radar. Narcs don't care. They don't care how they do it, but they're going to make sure that you're painted a liar when you're not. They elicit channels such as, like I said earlier in the last excerpt, why it's hard for a successful person, educated person, even harder, or a person of a level of professional echelon to leave, is because you're dealing with higher variables. You're dealing with a narc who may be well connected. You might be dealing with a narc who is very well interviewed with everybody, that they're not like that. So when you hear, oh, so-and-so is always in a good behavior, of course, in front of you, they're never like this behind closed doors. They're never like this when everybody's gone and everybody's left and it's just you and their word against yours and your word against theirs. Or if they can elicit the kids. If you have kids with one of them and you're talking about higher variables and higher factors such as economics, where it's money, where it's assets, land, property, and things like that, cars, you're adding another layer of sauce to a narc who will do anything for you to not have to be paid out, or for them to offboard without doing anything but giving you the middle finger and how far they can ruin your life. And they will. They will literally systematically smile in everybody else's face when they're having dinners with everybody, when you're coming together at family dinners or outside of family dinners. If you're dealing with a narc and you're not dealing with your family, but you're dealing with them in a marriage, they're going to make sure everybody else sees them being Prince Charming. But when everybody leaves, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde comes out, or what I call the what they call converted or covert snide remarks, but you know that they mean to go and insult you, or they'll have the off-color jokes that they know is harmful or hateful, or they'll bring up things that they know are crossing boundaries that you have, and they specifically get off on it because they're going to remain calm. Mind you, you're seen cutting up or you're feeling some type of way towards them because they enjoy it. They elicit the levels of narc-foolery, hostility, and you're seen as the narc. You see what I have to deal with? They play the martyr role so well that you're up here like, are you serious? And this is the way they are in courts. This is where they are around police officers. And I'll be damned if they are actually connected with anybody of a higher echelon that can get them out of their foolery. They will smear campaign. They will lie on you. They will triangulate. They will reverse project. They will tell lies and pathological lies on you that you will sit there and be up there. Like, if you ever think about Courage the Cowardly Dog and you watched how Eustace used to do Courage in front of Muriel, and he'd be like that. That is the exact same thing that a victim is dealing with dealing with the narc. Because by the time they're sitting in front of the police officer, or they're sitting there in a court of law because the narc knows how to legally abuse the system, navigate it, and act like a whole darn, I didn't do anything. Yeah, I'm going to combat this. Or if you're dealing with someone who is a police officer, oh, I've had years in the military. I would never do that. Okay, who gives a damn? But you're talking about levels and depths of them willing to do anything and tell somebody anything. And by the time that the officer listens to that spiel, looks at you like you're crazy, after they've crazy made you, provoked, gaslighted you, you've called cops multiple times based on what they've done, and they'll ignore you because their crony might be ex-military, or their crony might be a police officer's son, or in my case, that's what I had happen. Or you're sitting up here looking at somebody well-connected, or you're looking at other depths of that where, hell, if you try to tell the truth, you're going to spend more time trying to justify that you're not the narc and them painting you as one or setting you up. And what I mean by setting you up, narcs are strategic. They're very manipulative. They're very coercive in recruiting others who have no clue what chapter they walked in on, but they will be first ones to judge you, and they will be the first ones to help a narc. Then when it comes out all in the wash, then they still feel like they want to go and help the narc because the narc has benefited them, or they have some level of depth of fear of the narc and they don't want to be underneath the bus or underneath the narc's target. So therefore they're more than happy for you to be the target, and they will refuse to do anything. And then by the time they realize they've been duped, and then they want to remove themselves as far as they can for that, then they want to all come out the woodwork and, well, he was like this, or if you have a woman, oh, she was like this forever today. I mean, I don't know what to do. Yeah, you did. Because an enabler is the worst thing and detrimental to a divorce. A toxic shamer is the worst detrimental to a offboarding. And a complete complicit set of enablers are the worst type, or what I call facilitators of injustice, malfeasance, or gross negligence, or gross misdocumentation. Because you will spend more time undoing the misdocumentation or the levels and depths of harmful things that were written about yourself, whereas the narc was protected, or the narc's cronies or flying monkeys by proxy that you gray rocked, or you went out your way to no contact, or you don't email, you don't come by, you don't go through anything, or if you left something with them, you ask them one time, then they want to go start arguments and call you toxic because they're building their case against you. I've been through it. Not only will they do stuff like that, but they will do things to habitually hurt you or harm you. I had a narc actually get rid of my stuff, and I didn't mean to leave it where I left it, but I asked about my stuff and the motherfucker gave it to someone else, trying to be petty, so I would go off. But you know what I realized at that point? Go ahead and replace your stuff. It's better than going and begging the narc for something you left behind. So when you're offboarding and divorcing them, whatever you leave behind, just leave it there. Because a narc uses belongings, possessions, things to aggravate. They damage your equipment. They damage your products. They provoke. They like to cross boundaries. They make copies of keys. They will watch and observe you. They will voyeur you to find out what you got going on so they can use it against you. They violate boundaries that nobody in their right, good, clean, good, solid mind would think of doing. They do it because they want you to shut up. They will elicit other people to get you to shut up because they know if they do it, you're going to out them. So they'll use other idiots, or what I call beta. They're beta people. They're not omega, they're not alpha, they're just beta people that they beta test to do their narc foolery. Your omega people are the ones that are in between, that kind of have a little bit of a authority level, but they're kind of understanding, but they don't understand, but they're still malleable to do their dirty work. The narc will go out their way to use the omega to do most of their primary stuff, but that beta is the one that they put the batteries in the back to do all of their dirty work and throw them underneath the bus when they're expendable. And that is where, when you're a very well-versed or very well aware of how a narc operates, you become a danger and a threat to them. Not only will they elicit levels of threats to you, covert, overt, or through their betas or their omegas who they use, so they can be far removed from any of their covert foolery or their dangerous foolery, unless they really get to the point that they feel like, oh yeah, I gotta shut this person up. Oh yeah, I don't want to go to court, or I don't want to pay them out because they're tired of my crap. That's when they become deadly. That's when they become very sociopathic. That's when they become textbook down to, I'll give you a prime example. Have you ever thought of Ted Bundy? He's likable. He's a beautiful narc. He's that classic romantic narc. You never really know that he's going to pounce on you until he's through love bombing and he's done everything possible that textbook would make you think he's Prince Charming. So he's built the rapport, he's built the trust. Then he pounces on you like a predator. That's a narc. Narcs are really cerebrally not capable of not being in control. The minute they lose control of the narrative or how they look to other people, you become a threat and you become a danger to their whole act, their persona, their whole, what I call interviews well, but they're a complete train wreck underneath it all. But the facade that you're revealing that they've been doing is a level that they're going to have to pay for what they've done, or accountability that they may have to go through. And that is why I said it's epic failures at every level for not being able to be well trained, well understanding of how far they will work. That is why the red flag needs to be put there when somebody reports somebody like that, or doxing is what I would like to say, and levels of where we as the United States need to step up to the bar with the DSM about narcs, and there should be chargeable levels for narcissism, sociopathy, because once you go to a level of toxic derangement and disorder, and you're becoming a 5250, 5150, and you're becoming a complete total danger to everyone around you, and you're absolutely eliciting harm to the levels of economic, financial, and coercive control, or hitting every red flag that's an indicator for the Vic who's feeling some type of way like their life is in danger behind that narc's antics, or the narc by proxy's antics, there has to be some bridging the gap there. There has to be levels of something needs to be done about this person, because they're a danger to themselves and others. And not only that, they're willing to tell lies to the degree and pentameter that they will do. I've had that happen. That is why I said it is more than okay to leave a situation. It is more than okay to address it. And if you don't write it down, or if you don't document, it never happened. And I never thought I would agree to that until I went to nursing school, and then offboarding from that relationship at that point in time. And we were getting down to the good, the bad, the ugly, and really levels of danger. And I had to go to court. And I'll never forget the theatrics that this narc did. I mean, he showed up at my house afterwards apologizing. And I'll never forget the look on my face when there was absolute evidence. The DA saw the evidence. They picked up the case. I didn't really want to press the charges because he kept boring a hole in my face the day that he jumped out of the car and whatnot. And his sister patched him up. Then his sister went after me and felt justified because only one juror thought he was not guilty. The rest of them did. So it was only by his theatrics and the judge allowing the other narc by proxy, who sat there and went after me morning, noon, and night and kept the mess up that she was doing. Alongside that, she even enabled him to come around me. before court. So he sat there painting me as a jilted ex, and she was allowed to testify when I asked the judge not to. But that's what narcs do. They are capable of telling lies and recruiting others to do their dirty work. And the narc by proxy female, she should be charged for committing perjury. But that's where I said the danger comes in when you're offboarding from a narc. You don't want them anymore, or the narc's told you, I'll kill you if I see you with anybody or that person. I was told that. But the narcs by proxy will sit there and do all this enablement. And then when it comes out in the wash, what you say about them, whether they are military veterans, non-veterans, or people who are well-known in the city with a lot of people, and their families are well-liked, then you have a level and depth of narcissism and sociopathy where your own family can get targeted. It happened to me. And it becomes a level of that narc using every medium that they possibly can to shut you up or humiliate you into submission, or they will damage your whole entire life, destroy business or anything that you have. If you're not a business owner, they will destroy you through your kids. They will have everybody and their mama go after your kid if they can to shut you up. I've had it happen, and my kid almost got kidnapped at a bus stop to shut me up about it, because the harm that was done is becoming more deadly and becoming more escalated, more calculating. And once it becomes that type of level of depth and dismemberment or fear of your life, or being in fear of your life, or your child in fear of their life, or being threatened, that is taking it beyond what a narc considers jokes or levels of, oh, I was just joking, you're just overreacting, you're being oversensitive. It crosses the line of decency and boundaries of what jokes are. And it crosses even the line of decency of ritual or anything like that. It crosses a line to out of order, disgusting, psychotic levels of psychiatric deranged behavior that is detrimental to the victim and erodes the victim's sanity, mental health, or in some cases, some people are driven to suicide. Not that I'm suicidal or anything like that, but I was told by the narc and narc pals, narc family, kill myself, harm myself. When narcs get mad, their families get recruited. And if their families are just every bit as narcissistic and toxic as they are, you can guarantee they're going to uphold them in their wrongdoing. And they're going to turn a blind eye. And by the time you're sitting up here reeling from all of the stuff that they've done, if it's not financial, physical, emotional, sexual, or levels of depravity that they will exhibit to get you to stop talking about them or do things like that, they will continue to elicit it. I have a narc that tampered my bed. I have a narc that tampered my house, tampered my doors, made copies of keys, did everything possible. And the thing is, I know that my life is always going to be continually at risk because he knows a lot of people. A lot of people enabled him. They feel entitled to do what he did. They feel entitled because, well, at that point, I guess it was okay to them, or they were perfectly fine with it as long as it wasn't them. And that's what narcs do. They bank on people being betas and omegas. They don't want an alpha person. They don't want an empath or educated empath, or they don't want someone who is well versed in how they are, because you become, like I said, a threat to them, a threat to their fake persona, a threat to their identity that they have, that they display to everybody else. So they're not what they post to be, they're not what they present to be, and they certainly are not what they have told the world that they are. Because in their mind, they have a grandiosity, and this is where you get the covert narc, and then you got the overt narc, and you got the grandiose narc, and you have the one that they sit and they fly underneath the radar because they don't do as much damage. But effectively, your grandiose narc, your malignant narc, are the type that can be covert or overt, or they can be a little bit of both, because they know how to put on a good show. And that is a level and depth of mind-blowing, I don't know how else to explain it, gutting, emotionally damaging, life and soul obliterating levels of realization that they're willing to go that far. And once they become dangerous, 7 red flag levels of homicidal sociopathy, just to get you to stop telling what they are like or who they are, they will do stuff like that. And here's the thing, I'm not going to stop, because my life almost got ended. I almost got poisoned to death by one. I lost several businesses. I have lost 7 years with my daughter because of this. That's not a joke. And the only people who are mad are the other narcs just like him. the other malignant narcs, the toxic narcs, the sociopaths who sat there and enabled it, or the people who are levels of Leos, law enforcement, DCNF, or other people I went to help, or the AG or the mayor, or the city councilor or city admin, or even outside of that, my governor, or across state lines. You have to understand, a narc can't stand the truth. A narc hates the truth, and the narc will do anything to eliminate the truth. And what makes it so bad is a narc is not illuminated. They will sit there and do their levels of narc foolery and hide behind, oh, I'm a decent person, I'm a decent soul. Yeah, I could never do any wrong. Yeah. You know, I'm a good father, or I'm a good global citizen. And when they act like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde behind closed doors, a complete, total Charles Manson, Ted Bundy. And the worst part about it, judges never recognize it, lawyers never recognize it, therapists never recognize it unless they're in specialty, or unless they are well versed and they can sit there and eyeball that narc and see what the narc is doing to the victim sitting right there. Because to sit there in a courtroom with a real textbook narc who sat there and did all those theatrics, and even the DA apologizes like, I'm sorry this happened. He should be in jail, and I'm sorry what happened. You know that's bad when they know the idiot's a complete, total, complicit, willing liar. To sit there and elicit another person who's a beta and capable of being her own woman to lie for him. And that's what narcs do. They use romance, they use dick game, they use whatever sexual ability that they can to get someone on their side. And it's sad that they will take levels of not even loving that person, will come to the person who's their primary object of their obsession or fatal attraction or fatal vows, and literally tell you that they love you right after they've done some betraying things. That's how far a narc will go. And you'll be sitting up here looking at them like, I know you're not sitting up here telling me you're sorry for what you just did. And at that point, you realize you have to divorce that narcissist, sociopath, narcopath, or psychotic, psychiatrically deranged, unhinged, unstable, covert narc and pals. And even if your own family has been told and they ignored it, at that point, there's a level of trust that you will no longer feel towards anybody because you don't know who you can trust. Because narcs have a habit of even getting other people's families to side with them so long as there's benefit. And that's the scary part about a narc. They will take it to the next 10th degree power that they possibly can to recruit anybody. And it's a scary thought that even going on a vacation with them, cruise, or on a plane with them, that they will facilitate any levels of shutting you up if they can. And believe it or not, they will find your favorite things and poison you. They will do anything to just make sure that they don't seem like what they really truly are behind closed doors. And the worst part about it, law enforcement has yet to understand that. There's not enough training. There's not enough specialists that are capable to take this on. And this is what I would charge anybody to take on this fight for domestic violence, domestic terrorists, domestic abusers, and start putting together profiles of several different types, because I've noticed in my experience there are different types, male and female. And it depends on how they really are raised and what their level of trauma is to traumatize you. But again, there's no excuse for a traumatized person to abuse someone and do the levels of narc foolishness that they do. If that's the case, I should be out here abusing people and doing the most. But I'm not. But I choose not to be a narc. I choose not to be a sociopath. I choose not to do that because that's not my level of job capacity, and I don't have that kind of immunity, and it's not required of me to do that. So that's the difference between a narc. They're not charged with that, and they're not even capable or supposed to be able to do that legally at a civilian level. And if you think about how far a narc will go to do that, they are very dangerous. Because with the latter pentameter of that, it's different when you are trained and you know how far to take it. Versus someone who's untrained, unhinged, completely neurotic, sociopathic, and really a danger to themselves and other people. That in itself says that we have missed the mark in psychiatry, psychology, and levels and depths of understanding the narc brain and their functioning and their malfunctioning and where they are uncontrolled and controlled. And that's where I say divorce them by any means that you possibly can, and document, because you don't want to come up missing. You don't want your car blown up with you in it. You don't want your kids damaged by them, because they will use kids as pawns. And that's the last part that I always want to hone in on, and this is the second session, and why I expound on kids. Kids end up learning how to be a narc by proxy, or sociopath by proxy, by watching a career sociopath do what they've done. And it's not something that they're born with. A child could be born with a nurturing parent or co-parents and things like that, and have other adjacent narcs or sociopaths who are stepping in, and they can actually teach a child how to be like that, and that is effectively abuse by proxy. It's emotional Munchausen by proxy, and emotional abuse as well. And the levels and depths of narc will do to use kids as a pawn is sickening. It is very sickening, because it will make that child poisonous and sick. And not only that, what I mean by poisonous is that they're poisonous to the person who's the target. And then the levels of how it breaks down the familial makeup, or the familial levels of understanding of what loyalty, and the lines get blurred with that. And when a narc is out to not have to pay child support or not have to pay for their levels of damage, they will elicit children into their effective levels of emotional psychotic abuse. And if the child is not quite aware or not well versed in narcissism, or doesn't understand what's going on and they're young, it takes doctors and teams of doctors to undo all of that, to get them to understand. But then there's another level of caveat of damage that happens to the child, who elicits levels of upset, hostility, animosity, because there's trauma there. They're watching someone that they're supposed to trust to mold them to be the right type of person, who has molded them to be the wrong type of person. Then there's levels of guilt and shame that gets elicited, and the narc knows this. They don't care. Kids are expendable. They become the toy for abuse, and targeting the good parent versus the counter parent who's trying to abuse the other person who's the target of their obsession, or fatal vows, fatal obsession, or fatal offboarding is what I call it. Because they have no intent of ever loving anyone but themselves. They have no remorse in that. So whether or not they use the kid as an expendable pawn, they don't care, because it reduces the effective levels of damage that they inflict. And if they can use the kid for online beta games, or recruit other people, even not kids but teenagers or other adults who are not quite functional to understand that they're being used. Narcs know that. They're very smart, they're very cunning, they're very cold, they're very calculating, they're non-remorseful, and when you acknowledge it, they will justify their wrongdoing by trying to reverse project anything that they've done to you and invalidate. They'll go tell everybody else, you see, this is what I deal with. You see, I'm just a painstaking husband. No, you're the pain in the ass husband. You're the toxic sociopath. You're the toxic 7 fire alarm type of sociopath who has damaged lives and doesn't care. But that's what you're dealing with when you're dealing with a toxic narcs by proxy, and others who get and sit there on the sideline as what I call narc enablers. They don't care, as long as it's not them. And this is where we have to lead the charge socially, economically, financially, for a fund for people who go through this type of stuff, and having a pool of money for people who have to offboard from a narc or a dangerous situation, so that they can get adequate shelter stays or be in a hotel for 6 to 12 months to completion, so they can get their kids and keep them. Or they can go through levels where the narc has to pay for it restitution wise, where police officers can do the intel and go through the red tape to say, okay, I need to do intel, I need to go tap this, I need to do this, so I can find out who's at fault. So when it comes to court and you can finally get some kind of justice, if you get any, get a permanent protective order, or a permanent do not contact order, or protective order for the kids, and it's never going to run out. Because with narcs, they never stop, because as soon as they know that their restraining orders run out, they start their foolishness. They start it right over. They don't stop. They'll go to anger management and then turn around and do the same exact thing. They will talk to your therapist and crazy make you, and some of them will grease the pocket of a therapist if they can. It's happened to me. There's a case in Columbia, South Carolina about the same thing with a rich white man who did it to his wife, and he had her misdox. He paid the therapist to misdox her. But when a narc wants to stop at nothing to have you locked up, shut up, or in a state hospital because you're telling the truth about them, they will do it. Because they are just that dangerous. They're just that capable of wanting to keep their assets, their property, their land, their business, everything they have, so that they can make it seem like you lied from day one when you didn't. And that's what the nutshell of what a narc is like and what living with a narc is like, but why you should divorce one. And if you're dating one, hurry up and backpedal and pussy pop as fast as you can, as far as you can from them. And if they're eliciting dangerous red flag behaviors, then definitely pound the alarm and leave. And just go no contact, gray rock, and try your best not to react. It's easier said than done, especially when we're in the age of social media and there's no rules. Really. There are IC3 rules and there are levels of internet crime rules, but they haven't really gone in depth as to what should be considered a chargeable offense and patternistic offense behavior. And it just becomes the victim ends up getting banned offline or being threatened to be banned or shut up or don't say this, or when you're seen reacting, then you're blamed for that. So the victim is always caught in a rock and a hard place. And then by the time it's all said and done, the narc has gotten away with soul rape, emotional torment, damage, financial coercive abuse, coercive control, post-offboarding abuse, and levels of financial damage, and you're left with the shards on the ground, picking up the pieces of your life that they've obliterated and kids that they've damaged. So that's the reason why I made the second recording about this, and for you guys to understand what levels they will go to sit there and elicit levels of upset, anarchy, and narc foolishness, and detrimental, homicidal, sociopathy, and levels of I'll do anything to shut you up. They will. And the worst part about it, cops don't ever notice it until it's too late, until somebody ends up on Snap, first 48, or ends up dead or in prison. Look at, like I said, Betty Broderick. She was dealing with a narc husband. He was a lawyer. She snapped. He used his narc wife to sit there and come after her. And the kids were used as a pawn. She snapped. Marissa Alexander, she's dealing with a man who's sitting there terrorizing her morning, noon, and night. She fires off a warning shot. She gets to sit her butt behind in jail. But it was reactive abuse because she got tired. She got fed up. Centoya Brown, same thing, dealing with levels and depths of what she was dealing with. And then you finally just snap and you go do something to your abuser, but then you end up sitting in prison until you get pardoned. And those are levels and depths of failures or epic levels of gross negligence, malfeasance, miscarriage of justice, or protections. So it's like I said, you can either blame the cops, you can blame the judges or the lawyers, or you can change the laws, the bills, and start making these laws come into place, because there's too many people who are dying behind narcs or sociopaths. I didn't say you can point out every narc, sociopath, or narcopath or toxic person, but you definitely can mitigate, like Time's Up Me Too, and coming up with rules for mediation, alternative dispute resolute before it gets to that point, or if it ends up being a criminal thing. And, you know, when a narc is out to poison you or tamper with AC units, you can go through that. Or they will elicit levels of damage and slow murder, slow death by tampering your bed or doing all kind of things to kill you. They don't care because they hate the fact that you're telling the truth. And the enablers are more mad because they may lose their jobs or they may lose their position in life, but they were whole fine with it as long as they weren't doing their job or as long as they were paid to not do their job. They're fine with it as long as truths don't come out. And that's what makes it so bad about the enablers or the people who are supposed to be set forth to protect you. They end up getting mad with the victim because of the fact that you're telling the truth and that they failed or they dropped the ball, and then the victim ended up getting re-traumatized, re-victimized by law enforcement, Leos, judges, lawyers, and other people who sit there and who aren't well versed in it, and then they want to believe that this doesn't happen. How can this happen? Nobody would really do that. Yes, they would. And I found that a lot of these cluster B types are in positions of authority as well. So you have to look at it for an exact science for what it is, but you also have to look at it from the victim's point of view of what it's like, or getting toxic food or shut down food or things like that. It happened to me. You know, narcs don't care. You're expendable to them. Your life is expendable. You're even told, oh, if I have to get rid of you, I will. You're even told your life is expendable. You're even told that you're not valued. Your life doesn't matter, or we hope you die. Because once narcs and their cronies or people who are protecting them in their wrongdoing get found out, they hate the victim. And it's some weird mechanism. They have a knee-jerk reaction. Instead of saying, okay, I was wrong, I dropped the ball, there's gross miscarriage of justice, malfeasance, very few people will admit to it. That's where you have the good cop versus bad cop, or you get the good judge versus bad judge, or you get the good social worker versus the burnt-out social worker who could give a damn less, as long as they're getting their billables and bookables. So it's a lot to it, and it's just levels to it. I didn't say you got to point out every person who does something wrong. You can't point out every pedophile. You can't point out every narc. You can't point out every sociopath. You can't point out every abuser, because there's so many in this world. But the one chance that you get off the cuff someone that you could legitimately catch in wrongdoing, and you literally have proof, and you still drop the ball, that is a level of gross miscarriage of justice, malfeasance, and malpractice, and levels and depths of violation to the victim. And therefore, like when you're offboarding or divorcing a narc, these things need to be brought up as precedents when you're going to court, and not used against the victim, but the narc to be explaining themselves, because narcs hate having to do that. They hate having to justify damaging lives, or using kids for pawns, or counter-parenting, or if you're dealing with a long-term relationship, which is considered common law, and you're dealing with the same variables, but you're not dealing with pieces of paper, but you might be having houses together, cars together, and you have to split assets still. So those are things that have to be looked into, and we have to go lead the charge for change of that. And then on top of that, for those of us who are in those situations and have offboarded and are becoming recovery warriors in this, we all have to work together cohesively to find adequate gap, or bridging the gap in between. Because like I said, you can't rat and snitch everybody out. And it's not considered rat and snitching when your life is being put in danger, or someone threatens to kill you or actually harms you. At that point, you're literally doing what you have to do to protect yourself and your children. And every mother or father has a duty to warn, or a duty to protect. That is in Child Protective Services. So therefore, when they drop their ball, then that's on them, not the victim. So without further ado, that's why I am justifying saying that sometimes it's okay to divorce. It's okay to divorce because it's dangerous to you, your children, or your family, or vice versa. In my case, all of the above. And then you realize, okay, you know what? I need my safety. I need my sanity, and my child needs her safety and her sanity, and she needs to be able to be resilient and recover from this. She can't recover with a narc hole doing it to her mom, or vice versa, other people, adjacent narcs by proxy, who are aiding and abetting a narc hole, or a sociopath who is absolutely met the criteria of being in danger. So with that, narcs don't always harm children either, but they will harm children if they feel like they want to shut you up. So it's two different caveats to that. So again, like I said, I wanted to lead the charge for this, and also lead the discussion with this. So this is Diva Talk Radio. I wanted to close out the session and let you guys know, thank you for attending. And you guys need to understand this. Each one, reach one, teach one. And sometimes we have to explain everything in the pentameter. And if I had to give a victim impact statement, this is the things that I would talk to the judge about and tell them. This is why I need the order of protection lifetime. This is why I need the no contact. This is why I need the divorce. This is why I want to divorce this person mentally, emotionally, financially. This is why he needs to be away from me. This is why he needs to be away from the children. This is why he or she needs to stop being around me or around the children, because they've done nothing but poison this child or other children adjacent that came into my life. That is where you have to go and make these statements, and you have to be able to be calm while you're making this statement. It's easier said than done when you're facing off or squaring off with your narc in court, which is why I said they should do adequate protections for video conference or video court, allowing the victim to be able to speak and not hear the narc, or hear the things the narc is trying to do to get them unnerved and rattled. And again, those are things that have to be changed in the court of law, and the bookals and bills can get transferred to the narc. You have to pay for the recovery, pay for the therapies, pay for the counseling, pay for the restoration of your life back to normal, because narcs hate that. But they need to understand you just can't go around here destroying lives, threatening lives, or damaging people's lives and then expect that to be okay. So with that, thank you for attending Diva Talk Radio. So I hope you guys like this session. Tell me what you think. Later.